Since the beginning of Kamala Harris's candidacy, Republicans Donald Trump and the Fox propaganda outlet have been constantly moving the goalpost. First, the complaint was that Kamala Harris didn't have any policies. So Kamala Harris released her policies and they were fantastic. Then the gripe was, well, she hasn't defended those policies in any interviews. And so she sat down and had those interviews and absolutely crushed them. But then MAGA was losing it that those interviews were too easy. There were too many softballs. She needs to sit down and do tougher interviews. And so she did. 60 Minutes and Tonight with Brett Baier, in which she not only shut down Donald Trump and his lies, but called out Brett Baier for his as well, with a perfect takedown of the propaganda coming out of the Fox propaganda outlet. And so now, what does MAGA have to say? Absolutely nothing, because Kamala Harris has consistently demonstrated what an incredible leader and what an incredible candidate she is in this race as Donald Trump continues to flail. So even Fox at this point, yes, even the Fox propaganda network has to admit that Donald Trump is losing and Kamala Harris is crushing it. And they are doing it with a heavy heart, behind eyes holding back tears, as Donald Trump is probably throwing ketchup in Mar-a-Lago somewhere. And I cannot wait to get to the meltdown that happened at Fox following Kamala Harris's incredible interview. But before we do, if I could quickly ask you to leave a like on this video, and if you haven't already, to hit that subscribe button and join the community that we're building on this channel. It really means a lot to me, and it really goes a long way. Now, like I said, we are going to check out the absolute meltdown of the Fox host admitting that Donald Trump is losing this race after Kamala Harris's interview. But before we do, I want to hear Pete Buttigieg's take on what happened tonight, because it was so incredible.
What I will say is that, one principle I try to remember that I thought she demonstrated is making sure not to allow them to kind of change the subject or the framing of the question at hand, right? The whole topic there was the fact that a candidate for president and a former U.S. president described the American people, the ones he disagreed with, as the enemy. And it's really important not to allow some sidestepping of that. So, she did that. She also made sure to continue to get her point across, even when she was being repeatedly interrupted. As somebody who has a lot of batting practice myself on that network, really proud of how she represented her views, her values, and this ticket in front of a conservative audience. Something I might add, by the way, that is a show of strength. That is the exact opposite of the weakness that Donald Trump has demonstrated by pulling out of going even on CNBC, which is hardly a liberal bastion, or 60 Minutes, where it's customary for both candidates to go on. He's not prepared to go in front of a skeptical, let alone unfriendly audience. She demonstrated the opposite. And remember, this is in keeping with her continued outreach to conservatives. Look at the difference between her making clear that she would include Republicans in her cabinet, campaigning with so many Republicans, principal Republicans, who are for her, versus him referring to Democrats as the enemy.
Pete, as always, is spot on. Donald Trump has been terrified to sit down in any instance in which he's going to get even a nominal amount of pushback, but Kamala Harris was happy to go on Fox News and take down Brett Baier's gotcha questions. Those weren't tough questions. Those were hack gotcha questions. But Kamala Harris shut them all down and gave her future-focused policy vision, as she always does, something Donald Trump is completely incapable of. And like I said, we are going to get into the MAGA reaction of what happened in that interview today, but I think we also need to take a look at the reaction from Donald Trump's Fox appearance earlier today and his women's issues town hall, which Jessica Tarlov perfectly responded to right here.
There are other women at the table.
What were you offended by? Let's hear it.
Okay, well, I'm glad that you asked. I was offended by him calling himself the father of IVF and then saying that Senator Katie Britt is young and fantastically attractive, as if that's relevant at all to her concerns about her friends who have used fertility treatments in order to become pregnant. I was offended by the fact that he was asked by a voter, why is the government involved in women's basic rights? And he answered with saying, I think it's great. For 52 years, all the legal scholars, the best legal scholars, Democrats, Republicans, both of them, have wanted to get rid of it. And that's what I've done here. That is not at all how the legal scholars feel or how the American populace feels. And to the questions about lowering the prices of things, again, no real answer. I'm glad I know more about how donuts are made or whatever was going on there, but I don't think anyone walked away from that thinking that he had any sort of empathy for what's going on in women's lives all over the country. I mean, he kicked it off actually by kind of laughing at the Amber Thurman story. There was, Harris brought up that the family had put out a prebuttal, and he laughs and he says, we're going to have higher ratings, which seems pretty cruel. You could use that moment to say, I am so sorry that that young woman, a mother of a 6-year-old boy, lost her life.
The contrast between these candidates, it couldn't be any clearer. And that is why we are seeing even MAGA Fox hosts have to admit that Donald Trump is losing, and Kamala Harris absolutely crushed it tonight. And it is so funny to see their sad faces, especially Dana Perino, who we're going to check out. They're so disappointed that they have to admit the truth that Kamala Harris is crushing it. So let's take a look at a couple of Fox hosts who did just that.
At times, especially when she was trying to go after Donald Trump, she was fairly effective in that to try to get her point of view across.
You did a great job because you asked the tough questions and you went back at her with tough questions, and she should be pleased with how she performed this evening.
Well, she was combative and energetic, and she certainly landed some blows on Donald Trump.
Oh man, we rarely hear the truth on the Fox propaganda outlet, but when it is coming from a sad Dana Perino, it makes it all the much sweeter because Kamala Harris did crush it. Absolutely obliterated her interview tonight. She was so incredible. And we heard a little bit about it from Pete before, but he had a couple more thoughts that I thought were really interesting and insightful on Kamala Harris's performance tonight. And he took a little shot at Donald Trump that we got to check out.
Well, it was really impressive on her part. She was tough, smart, focused, disciplined, the same qualities that made her a very effective prosecutor, and I think are going to make her a very effective president. And she did it in territory that's obviously not ideologically friendly. I think she'd have many reasons to think twice about whether she was going to get fair treatment on Fox News. But even as they were interrupting her, preventing her from speaking, she got her point across, and she called out things like that moment, that exchange that we just saw, where they attempted to sidestep the shocking fact of someone wanting to be president, calling Americans the enemy from within. And I think it's especially appropriate, actually, for her to do that on Fox, because, you know, when I think about conservatives, Republicans that I know, one of the things that's that I'm most sympathetic to about what sincere conservatives care about is a passion for liberty and a real concern about making sure that liberty is protected. Now, I disagree with a lot of Republican friends who think that, you know, that goes so far that, you know, enforcing the Clean Water Act isn't something we should do because it just might impinge on liberty. But these are the exact folks who need to be reminded about the implications for a freedom-loving country if the next president of the United States is somebody who has more than flirted with, talked about turning the military on American citizens who he disagrees with politically. And I think there are a lot of folks at home, maybe conservative, Republicans, or independents who lean right, who are thinking to themselves, you know, if you've got a friend or a coworker or a daughter who is more politically to the left than you are, is she going to be safe in a country where the president of the United States calls her the enemy?
Come on. Is there anyone better than Pete Buttigieg? Such an incredible call out of Donald Trump. Such an incredible job describing Kamala Harris's performance tonight, which was unbelievable. To me, I thought that it was a complete hack job from Brett Baier. People talk about him as this real journalist at Fox, that he's different from Sean Hannity or Jesse Waters, but to me it seemed like the same guy. It's just a different voice and face. He was asking these same gotcha questions, giving these same ridiculous lies on behalf of Donald Trump. One especially when he tried to sane wash Donald Trump's comments about the enemies from within, which we absolutely need to call out. And speaking of which, Kamala Harris did just that in a speech earlier today, and I think we should take a look.
He considers any American who doesn't support him or bend to his will to be an enemy to our country. And further, he says that as commander-in-chief, he would use our military to go after them. Honestly, let that sink in. Use of the American military to go after American citizens? And we know who he would target first, because he has targeted them and attacked them before. Journalists whose stories he doesn't like. nonpartisan election officials who refuse to cheat by finding extra votes for him, judges who insist on following the law instead of following him.
As much as MAGA wants to run away from it, and as much as they want to selectively clip his statements, Donald Trump himself will tell you that he wants to go after his political enemies. He tried to in 2016, 2017, 18, 19, 20, 21. Do we remember January 6th? And he will try to do it. Again, we always say on the show, Donald Trump is a pathological liar who we can never trust except for the rare instances in which he says things that hurt him. Those are the times we can trust Donald Trump. Because when he lets it slip, when he admits he was the one most responsible for overturning Roe v. Wade, when he admits he wants to be a dictator on day one, when he admits he wants to go after his political enemies, that's when he's telling the truth. A scary truth that we have to stop from becoming reality. And that is what we are going to be talking about every single day on this show. And if you want to support that, as always, you can hit that subscribe button. You can leave a like on this video. And if you stuck around at the end, you can drop a blue heart in the comments. And until next time, I'll see you soon.